So, good afternoon to everyone, or good morning. We are starting the acid-base disorders, acid-base balance. We have been discussing this for quite a few classes. Today, contemplating to do a sort of recap of what we have done till now, so that we are going into a next phase of this particular topic, wherein you take real life problems and start analyzing what is going on. So let me see. So this is the concepts part. So we already understand what is acidosis, what is alkalosis. So where is lowering of the pH is acidosis. Acidemia is what is circulating in the blood. Alkalosis, increase in the pH. We know the pH is just the inverse relationship in log to hydrogen ion concentration. When the hydrogen ion concentration go up, it is acidosis. So the inverse of that pH will go down. Alkalosis, the hydrogen ion concentration is reduced. So the inverse of that, the pH will go up. And then we also have simple and mixed disorders, which we will see. The arterial pH normally should be between 7.36 to 7.44. Anything less than 7.36 is acidemia and acidosis, and more than 7.44 is alkalemia with associated alkalosis. Emia means what is circulating, and osis is what is the pathology behind. So the basics is objectives. There is what is called the blood buffer system, which tries to absorb the immediate acid and base changes in the body, and we would like to look at some of these blood buffers. So before that, what are the normal values? You all should be having them on your fingertips, just like what is the hemoglobin normal. You should also know these things. 7.4 pH is the normal. Remember, 7 is the neutral pH, distilled water, and blood is slightly alkaline, arterial blood. And the venous blood, it is anywhere between 7.33 to 7.43. But concentrate on the arterial blood, because this is what we do in the arterial blood gas equation, arterial blood gas analysis. So arterial blood is pH of 7.4 is normal. Anything less than 7.35 is acidosis, and 7.45 is alkalemia, alkalosis. PCO2, 40 millimeters of mercury, partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Needless to say, it is arterial carbon dioxide, because we are looking at the arterial blood. Actually, in fact, it should have been written as PaCO2, small a, denoting arterial, but it is generally omitted. If you write capital A there, it becomes areolar carbon dioxide, which we are not dealing here. So this is arterial, P small a CO2 or PCO2. Likewise, P small a O2 or PO2 is the arterial oxygen concentration, which is measured in partial pressure, 95 millimeters of mercury. Saturation around 90%. And this is the base excess will not be applicable in venous blood. We will tell you what is base excess when we are working on the formula. Okay, bicarbonate normal is 24 milliequivalent. So 4 important parameters: pH, carbon dioxide, oxygen, and bicarbonate are the 4 things that you need to really understand as far as the values are concerned. Keep them and in your mind, and let's go to the next one. Okay. The homeostasis of the body is tightly controlled. Extracellular fluid 7.4, blood varies between 7.35 to 7.45. Needless to repeat those values of alkalosis and acidemia. Any pH less than 6.8, which is highly acidic, or more than 8.0 is not tenable with life. So this is diagrammatically representing 7.4 is the neutral, the pH of the blood, 7 being the neutral pH of distilled water. Slightly alkaline is the blood, and 7.35 to 7.45 is the range, the pH normal range. And of course, you have the alkalosis and the acidosis. Acidosis means decrease in the pH or addition of H ions. Alkalosis means excess of base or less of H ions, and pH is the converse of that, which is higher. So this we understand. Now we have volatile acids and fixed acids. Like carbonic acid is a volatile acid, dissociates to carbon dioxide and water. Volatile acids are those which can be excreted through the lungs. Fixed acids are those which need to be excreted in the kidney as a solute, whereas volatile acids can take the gaseous form and then come out of the lungs. So volatile acids means they can take a gaseous form and then come out of the lungs. So lung is involved in excretion of the volatile acids, and kidney is involved in the excretion of fixed acids like sulfate, phosphate, uric acid, and lactic acid, and ketone bodies which are beta hydroxybutyrate and other ketone body acids. Okay. Now the maintenance of blood pH, as we have already told earlier, is based on three important things. One is the blood buffer system, which is the one which is going to the instantaneously take care. The second one is the respiratory correction, which takes a few hours to work, and finally the renal mechanism, which may take a few days to a week. So there are three levels of correction. One is an instantaneous response by the blood buffers. A few hours the lungs come into picture and they try to adjust the disorder acid-base disturbance. In spite of it, if it persists, then you will see the pH shifted either to the acidic side lower or to the alkaline side higher, which becomes respiratory acidosis and respiratory alkalosis. And finally, the renal mechanisms are the compensatory mechanisms. They take a few days to a week. So there is an instantaneous thing, there is a few hours, a little lag, but and also you have a few days to a week. Then the buffer systems these are the ones which take up the hydrogen, excess hydrogen, or release hydrogen to neutralize the bicarbonate. When there is excess hydrogen, the buffer absorbs like a sponge the hydrogen ions. When there are less of hydrogen ions and base excess, the buffer will release the hydrogen ions and try to balance the bicarbonate. There are always buffers are a pair of weak acid and a base. They exchange a strong acid and a base, and the weak acids means acids which do not dissociate readily. Strong acid, for example, hydrochloric acid. It is a strong acid, immediately it becomes H and Cl. Likewise, sulfuric acid, it also dissociates immediately to H and HCO4, HSO4. Like that, nitric acid, HNO3. So this also becomes H and NO3. So H2NO3, sorry, H and HNO3. So these are the various sort of immediate acids are which immediately dissociate are called the strong acids, and weak acids are those, and weak bases are those which don't dissociate. For example, NaOH is a very strong base, so it dissociates into sodium and hydroxide group, and it's a strong base. Likewise, potassium hydroxide is a very strong base. Weaker bases are like dihydrogen phosphate, monosodium dihydrogen phosphate, and these are the weaker bases. Okay. Now the common formula is hydrochloric acid plus NaHCO3, H2CO3, carbonic acid, a weaker acid, and Na. So the stronger acid here is converted into a weaker acid, which doesn't dissociate very quickly. Here a stronger base is converted into a weaker base, bicarbonate, like NaOH, which is a very stronger acid, unlike NaOH. Bicarbonate is a very weaker base. So the net result is a stronger acid is replaced by a weaker acid, a stronger base is replaced by a weaker base. Weaker and stronger in the sense the dissociation constants are much lower for the weaker ones and much higher for the stronger acids and stronger bases. So what are the major intracellular buffers? NaH2PO4 versus Na2HPO4. So one monosodium dihydrogen, disodium monohydrogen is one buffer. So when hydrogen ion plus phosphate is H2PO4, this H2PO4 in the presence of OH reacts to HPO4 2 negative and then water. This is how it works. This gets split into HPO4 from this, and then acts with the hydrogen to form the H2PO4, or it can act with the OH. The H2PO4 can act with this one can act with the OH and then form water and again replenish the buffer. So this is how the major intracellular buffer, this is called the phosphate buffer. Simply monosodium sodium dihydrogen phosphate and disodium monohydrogen phosphate buffer is what is called the somebody has come. Okay. Now this is the phosphate buffer. Then we have the protein buffers, particularly the hemoglobin is a very potent protein buffer in the red cells, and it can give away a carboxyl group from the hydrogen ion, or it can accept a hydrogen ion in the amino group. Beauty of hemoglobin is it has got both carboxyl and amino group. The amino group can accept hydrogen, and the carboxyl group can give away the hydrogen depending on what is required in the system. So the plasma proteins also are another important sort of buffers in the plasma and extracellular fluid. Okay, intracellularly hemoglobin and phosphate, extracellularly bicarbonate buffer and the protein buffers are the important. This summarizes here. So there are two things in the plasma, intravascular, and then in the RBC or the intracellular. Here bicarbonate is the major buffer, and also the proteins also are the buffers here. So bicarbonate and protein, not much of phosphate and not much of no hemoglobin at all. Whereas in the RBC it is mainly the hemoglobin and also the bicarbonate and the phosphate buffer. So if I ask you a question, what are the buffers in the plasma? Immediate answer should be bicarbonate and to some extent protein. In the intracellularly, we have the RBC containing the carboxy hemoglobin, which is a very important molecule for accepting or donating the hydrogen ions with the carboxyl and the amino terminals. And of course, there is a bit of bicarbonate also there, and the protein buffer also is there. These are the intracellular ones. So already discussed these things. So how does the respiratory mechanism compensate? By exhalation of the carbon dioxide. Rapid and powerful, but only works with the volatile acids. We know that only volatile acids means which can form a gaseous take a gaseous form, and they can be excreted. So what happens in the body is hydrogen ions are accepted by the base bicarbonate and then forms a compound called the carbonic acid, which can dissociate into carbon dioxide and water. Carbon dioxide goes through the lungs and water is excreted through the kidney or added to the metabolic pool. So this is not possible with the fixed acids like the lactic acid and all, which are non-volatile acids. So body pH can be adjusted by changing the rate and depth of the respiration. Suppose you increase the rate of the respiration, more carbon dioxide is washed out. Depth of respiration also, more carbon dioxide is washed out, which means acid is removed. If the respiration is depressed, carbon dioxide is retained, which means more acid is retained. And then here, in the first case, the acid is excreted. In the second case, the acid is retained in the body. So what are the renal mechanisms? Renal mechanisms follow a particular pattern. pH is equal to pKa plus log of bicarbonate by carbon dioxide dissolved. Lungs take care of the carbon dioxide part. The bicarbonate, this is taken care by the lungs, and this part has to be taken care by the kidney. So the kidney's role in acid-base disorders is there are 3 or 4 fold. One is it excretes acid ions as such, or it can reabsorb the bicarbonate, or it can secrete the bicarbonate, make new bicarbonate, or it can secrete ammonia ions, excrete hydrogen ion per se, or as ammonia also. These are the 4 mechanisms how the kidney controls the acid-base balance. The excretion of hydrogen ions either in de novo or in the form of ammonium ions, resorption of bicarbonate into the system, adding to the alkali pool, or making new bicarbonate in the kidney itself, synthesizing new bicarbonate, which also adds to the alkali pool. That is how so you would have observed that this equation has got 2 components, the numerator and the denominator. The numerator is the kidney's role and the denominator is the respiratory role. Okay. The most effective regulator of pH, of course, is the kidney. pH of the urine is normally acidic. So when you have urinary infection, you give citralca. This is to alkalinize the urine, because most of the organisms do not thrive in the alkaline medium. That is why we alkalinize the urine. So we want to convert the acidic urine into alkaline urine. Normal pH, neutral pH of the water is 7, and this is 6 is an acidic pH of the urine. So H-ion concentrations generated in the body, H-ions are eliminated by the acidified urine. So during metabolic process, lot of hydrogen ions are generated, and these generated hydrogen ions add to the acid pool, and that is eliminated through the kidney by the mechanisms which we have seen, either by excretion of the hydrogen ion, or by the excretion of ammonium ion, or by generation of carbonate to combine with the hydrogen ion and neutralize the hydrogen ion, and that carbonate combination will form carbonic acid, and which gets dissociated into water and carbon dioxide, and water is excreted through the through the kidney, and carbon dioxide through the lungs. That is how the changes in the hydrogen ion concentrations are mitigated. Can eliminate large amounts of acid kidney, can reserve bicarbonate, can excrete ammonia, can secrete bicarbonate, can synthesize bicarbonate. All are possible. If kidneys fail, of course, the pH balance will also fail. So you see here in this equation, pH of a constricted system of plasma or blood is equivalent to pKa, which is a constant for the equation, plus log of bicarbonate by carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide we are bicarbonate by carbonic acid. Carbonic acid we are not able to measure directly. So carbon dioxide and carbonic acid ratio, instead of writing carbonic acid, we write it as a dissolved carbon dioxide. This is nothing but H2CO3 is nothing but H2O plus CO2. So we measure the PCO2 and have the dissolution constant there to know what is the bicarbonate. In fact, it should be HCO3 divided by H2CO3. Instead of writing H2CO3, we are writing dissolved carbon dioxide, which means both the same. The numerator is controlled by the kidney, and the denominator is controlled by the excretion of carbon dioxide through the lungs. Okay. Now, what is the normal bicarbonate? Normal bicarbonate is 24, we know. And then what is the normal PCO2? PCO2 is 40. 40 multiplied by dissolution constant is 0.03, which is equal to 1.2. So 2.24 divided by 1.2 is equal to how much? 20. So the pH here, the answer here comes to 20 in this case. And when you want to project that equation, that means 20:1. So there are 20 bicarbonates for every carbon dioxide. The ratio is 20:1, but the above equation tells us to have a pH of 7.4. Okay, let us say if the bicarbonate is 48 instead of 24, so 48 divided by PCO2, let us say, is 0.3 into 30. So that becomes 0.3 into 30 is 90, 48 divided by 90, and whatever number is the ratio you get, and that you have to convert into the pH. I will show you how to convert into the pH from hydrogen ion concentration and hydrogen ion concentration to pH. So buffers act instantaneously, respiratory mechanism several hours, renal mechanism several hours to days. Okay, the first line defense bicarbonate system, phosphate buffer in the intracellular, protein buffer in the plasma proteins, hemoglobin inside the cell, and then the physiological buffers are respiratory mechanism, few hours and then few days to week by the renal mechanism. This is the second line of defense. The immediate defense is the buffer, and the second line are the lungs and the kidney. Okay, this we will skip. Now, acid-base imbalances, acidosis, a decline in the blood pH. It could be metabolic acidosis or respiratory acidosis. The pH can be brought down due to disorders in the metabolism and mainly the kidney, or due to the respiratory acidosis, due to the respiratory fault. So in both the cases, there will be a drop in the pH, because acidosis means there is excess hydrogen ion. Hydrogen ion concentration inverse log is the pH, so the pH is going to be lower. So metabolic acidosis, there will be pH will be lower, and the bicarbonate also will be lower. The primary variable is bicarbonate, so pH is lower. Bicarb also is lower. The primary variable is also lower. Whereas here, the primary variable is carbon dioxide, pH is lower and PCO2 is higher. Because of the higher PCO2, carbon dioxide is more available, which is nothing but carbonic acid when dissolved in water, and that is respiratory acidosis. Remember, ROME, respiratory opposite, metabolic same set, ROMS, ROMS. So pH is down here, the primary variable bicarbonate is also down, the compensatory variable also will be lower. Whereas in respiratory acidosis, the prime pH is lower because it is acidosis, and then the PCO2, because by definition respiratory opposite side, and the bicarbonate also will swing to the other side. So this is the compensation, that the primary variable is here, it is the primary variable is the bicarbonate in metabolic and carbon dioxide in the PCO2 in the respiratory acidosis. So similarly you see the alkalosis, metabolic alkalosis and respiratory alkalosis. Alkalosis means there is less of hydrogen ion or the excess of base. In both cases, the shift of the pH is to the higher side than 7.45. So in alkalosis, the pH will be higher because there are less of hydrogen ions or excess of base. Metabolic alkalosis due to increase in the bicarbonate. This is the excess base. Respiratory alkalosis is due to decrease in the acid. So either the decrease in the acid or increase in the base can increase the pH. So here what happens, the pH is increased, but the primary variable is bicarbonate, that also increases. The secondary variable PCO2, that also increases. Here the pH is of course increased in alkalosis, and then the carbonic acid, that is PCO2, is on the opposite direction, and the bicarbonate also during the course of time will come down as a compensation. So use the same formula, respiratory opposite, metabolic same side. Metabolic acidosis we have seen, this is the pattern, and respiratory acidosis, this is the pattern, opposite side. And there are two types of respiratory acidosis, acute and chronic, as we have seen. And this also here acute and chronic, because in acute the kidney doesn't come very much into picture. In the chronic, of course, the kidney also comes, and the associated renal compensation also occurs. In metabolic alkalosis, this is the pattern, and respiratory alkalosis, this is the pattern. Remember, this occurs in the chronic, whereas in the acute we may not see much of the renal compensation to occur. So in respiratory alkalosis also we have both acute and chronic. So we have in total 6 disorders: one metabolic acidosis, one respiratory, metabolic alkalosis, and 2 respiratory acidosis, acute and chronic, and 2 respiratory alkalosis, acute and chronic. This is understandable, very simple. So pH, whenever the addition of acid or loss of base, there is an increase in the hydrogen ion concentration, relative increase in the hydrogen ion concentration, either by direct addition of acid or loss of base, for as in case of diarrhea. And then the relative excess of hydrogen ion concentration, inverse log of that is pH, so pH will go to the acidic side. Whereas decrease in the hydrogen ion concentration due to loss of acid or accumulation of bicarbonate, in which case hydrogen ion concentration is less, relatively less. So this decrease in the hydrogen ion concentration is inverse of that is the pH, and that pushes the pH to the alkaline side. Okay. Now compensation, metabolic and respiratory. The underlying problem is metabolic. Respiratory compensation could be hyper or hypoventilation. If the underlying problem is respiratory, renal compensation can be metabolic compensation. We'll see that. So we have come here. The law of mass equation is important. Carbon dioxide plus, this is the central molecule I told you, and it is the reversibly, it can act by the combination of hydrogen ions and bicarbonate ion to form one molecule of carbonic acid, which can reversibly change into carbon dioxide plus water. This is to be excreted through the lungs and water through the kidney or added to the metabolic. So this is the reaction. For any reaction, the K or equilibrium constant is equal to concentration of the reacting substances divided by the concentration of the resultant. Concentration of reacting substances means hydrogen ion concentration and bicarbonate ion concentration divided by the resultant is bicarbonate there in the denominator. We know that concentration of hydrogen ion concentration, if we inverse log of that is pH. So we'll come to that and let us write this carbonic acid or H2CO3 as a sort of dissolved carbon dioxide, which is PCO2 into solubility. PCO2 is, we don't measure by carbonic acid, we measure the PCO2 in the ABG, and we take that and use the solubility constant to get the value of H2CO3. So then how it happens now? So it can be rewritten as H is the concentration of reactants, H and bicarbonate. Resultant is the H2CO3. We have written here PCO2 into the dissolution constant. Dissolution constant is solubility constant is 0.0307. Simply speaking, you can even use 0.03 itself you can use. Now, this is the equation. We now move the H to the other side, opposite side, and 1 by H concentration. 1 by H is equal to pH, and this K will come to 1 by K. 1 by K becomes again the pHK, and log will be written here. Log of bicarbonate divided by log of this product, 0.03 into PCO2. This is called the Henderson-Hasselbalch equation. Anderson-Hasselbalch equation. Okay, Anderson-Hasselbalch equation is equal to pH is equal to the constant there in the form of a log, that is pK, plus log of bicarbonate divided by the log of PCO2 multiplied by 0.03, which is the dissolution constant. Okay, let us derive how we get our blood pH of 7.4. So same equation in the previous page we have brought here. Now we are given that pK is equal to 6.1. So we can understand from chemistry why pK is 6.1, but let us accept that it is 6.1 here. But let us look at the other values. Our bicarbonate is 24, our carbon dioxide is 40 normally, and then the product of that is 1.2. So 12 divided by 1.2 is 20, log of 20 is equal to 1.3, and we have got 6.1 as the constant, and the total is 7.4. Okay, so if you increase the bicarbonate, you get a higher value here, and then the pH will be shifted to the alkaline side. If you decrease the bicarbonate again, the pH will go to the other side. Likewise, changes in the carbon dioxide also, in the denominator also. Okay. Now, how do I convert hydrogen ion concentration into pH? So take 80 and subtract the calculated hydrogen ion concentration. Suppose I want to know the pH when the H ion concentration is, let us say, is 24. H ion concentration is 24. I have to subtract 80 minus 24. 24 is equal to 56. And we have to write 7 as the neutral pH, and next to that I put these two numbers. So given a hydrogen ion concentration, you can tell the pH. Let us say hydrogen concentration is 38. 38 is the pH will be 80 minus 38, which is equal to 42. 7 I have to take as the neutral pH and add this 4. That is the pH. That will be the pH. Okay. So if it is 53 hydrogen ion concentration, 80 minus 53 is equal to 27. So 7 is the mother. That is the neutral pH, and I added 27 to that, and that becomes 7.27. So you should be easily able to convert if the hydrogen ion concentration is given into pH, and vice versa also. You can also get the vice versa. Suppose let us do that. So let us say if the pH is 7.2, what will be the hydrogen ion concentration? To get 2 here, I require 60, isn't it? Then only I get 20. So that means my hydrogen ion concentration is equal to 60. Let's say 7.5 pH, which is an alkaline pH, is equal to 80 minus 50, which is equal to 30. My hydrogen ion concentration is less than normal being 40. So normal pH is 7.4. What is the hydrogen ion concentration? 80 minus 40, which is equal to 40. So hydrogen concentration is 40 in the normal blood. So that is a pH of 7.4. 7.5 means 30, 7.2 means 60, like that. You should be able to convert hydrogen ion concentration into pH and pH into hydrogen ion concentration. Why this is required? So when you measure the ABG, you are given the pH, and not the hydrogen ion concentration. So if you want to use the Anderson-Hasselbalch equation, you must know the hydrogen ion concentration. From the pH, you calculate the hydrogen ion concentration and post it there. Okay. So I told you potassium is the weather vane. Weather vane is, which needle-like thing which tells you about the weather, direction of the wind. So it is a poor man's measure of pH meter. The more the potassium, the more acidic is the pH. Okay. So higher potassium is designated in the ECG as the tall-tented P waves. Okay. So now we are going to the concept of anion gap. What is the anion gap? Sodium, chloride and bicarbonate. The major anion in the blood is sodium. The major cation means plus ion, which moves towards the cathode. And these are the minus ions or the anions which move towards the anode. Negative ions move to the anode or the positive pole, and positive ions move to the cathode, which is the negative pole of the electrolysis. So sodium is the major cation. Chloride and bicarbonate are the two other and important anions in the body, in the plasma. So the anion gap is equal to sodium minus chloride plus bicarbonate. That is the most important. The other unmeasured anions or unmeasured cations are calcium, magnesium, gamma globulin, potassium. Along with sodium, they are all the cations. So we have sodium plus unmeasured cations. You see, likewise, there are unmeasured anions other than chloride and bicarbonate, like albumin, phosphate, sulfate, lactate. So that becomes bicarbonate plus chloride plus unmeasured anions. Okay, sodium plus unmeasured cations, bicarbonate plus chloride plus unmeasured anions. So let's go to the next slide. So what we do is unmeasured sodium plus unmeasured cations and chloride plus bicarbonate plus unmeasured anions are at equilibrium. Okay, now we bring the chloride and bicarbonate to this side and send it to that side. That becomes sodium minus chloride plus bicarbonate, that is the cation sodium, of which subtract the chloride and bicarbonate, the common anions. You are going to get what is called UA minus UC. UA is the unmeasured anions, we don't measure. Likewise, we don't measure the unmeasured cations also. That's why they are UC. And the difference between unmeasured anions and unmeasured cations is what is called the anion gap. The gap in the anion, normally it is 12 to 14, plus minus 2, 10 to 14 you can say. 12 is the normal value. Anode is the positive electrode to which the cations go, and cathode is the negative electrode to which the anions move. Now, in the system, look at the left hand side. We have got sodium 140, potassium 4, calcium 5, magnesium 2, total of 151. But generally, these three are relatively constant. So we don't have to worry about that. We should concentrate only on the sodium. Okay, here we have got 103, 25, protein, others, total 151, electrically neutral, balanced. Okay, now we don't have to worry too much about these things because they don't change very much, and we take only these two. So when we do the anion gap calculation, subtract 140 minus sum of these two, 128 in this case, then we get the anion gap. That anion gap is nothing but this one minus this one. This one is how much? 23 minus this is 11, which is equal to 12. Here what we have written, 140 minus 128 is equal to 12. It is nothing but the difference between the unmeasured anions minus unmeasured cations. So that exactly is the 12. Normally plus minus 2, that is 10 to 14 is the anion gap. Okay, you can see here sodium, bicarbonate, and then chloride, and this is the gap, and normally it should be 10 to 12 or 10 to 14 milli equivalents is the gap. So in this case, you see sodium 134, these are relatively negligible. Bicarbonate and chloride together are 125. So we have the anion gap. Here 135, bicarbonate is, chloride is much more. So the chloride is more than 100 and bicarbonate is less. So we have the anion gap is much wider. In non-ion gap still is 125, 10. Whereas in this case, bicarbonate less than 20, chloride did not go up, and then naturally this sum will be lesser, and you have an increase in the anion gap. Okay. Now you need to correct the anion gap. Why to correct? Because each gram of plasma protein increases each gram of serum albumin decreases the anion gap by 3 milliequivalents. A decline in the serum albumin by 1 gram reduces the by 3 milliequivalents. If there is an increase in the protein, it increases by 3 milliequivalents. So for that reason, we need to correct. So if there is an anion gap of 12 in a particular patient, and his albumin is half of the normal. Half of the normal means 2, and each gram decreases by 3 units. So it is 3 into 2, 6 units it was decreased. We are seeing 12. Originally it must have been 18. The 6 lower we are seeing because there is each gram is reducing by 6. So add this 6 to that 12 and that becomes 18 milliequivalents. So whenever there is a hypoalbuminemia, then you have to correct for the anion gap. If there is no hypoalbuminemia, or if it is not given, you assume that there is no change in the serum protein and then go with the anion gap. If the serum protein is given in the calculation, you have to factor in and correct it. How do I correct it? 1 gram of serum albumin. If there is a drop in the serum albumin by 1 gram, it drops the pH by 3 milliequivalents. So to that extent, you add that 3 onto the observed delta, observed anion gap. Okay, observed anion gap. And that becomes the corrected anion gap. So if the observed anion gap is 12 and the serum proteins are half, then the correction factor will be 6. Total the corrected anion gap, which is called the AGC. AG corrected is 18. This we have to do the anion gap delta. We'll see what is delta in the next thing. Look at this here, 140, 103 plus 25. Together is 128, anion gap is 12. So here in this case, 103 plus 10, 113, 140 minus 13 is 27, which is much higher than the expected anion gap. So the delta gap will be 27 minus 12. Normal is 12, and then 12 is 127 is the patient. So the delta anion gap is 15. So this is assuming that the patient's albumin is normal. Supposing if the patient albumin is 3 grams instead of 4 grams, 1 gram of protein, drop in the protein decreases the pH by 3. So we have to add 3 to this number, that becomes total will be plus 8. So that is called the delta gap. So what do you do? First you get the anion gap, then you do the corrected gap, then you do the delta gap. What is the delta gap? The observed anion gap minus what should be normally there is 12. So that is the delta gap. Why is it required? That is essential to know whether the patient we are dealing with anion gap acidosis or non-anion gap acidosis. So some conditions can produce decreased anion gap whenever there is other cations like calcium, magnesium, hyperkalemia, they are increased, or if the proteins are multiple myeloma proteins and there, or there is a drastic hypoalbuminemia, there will be decrease here. In this case, there are cations have increased, so unmeasured cations have gone up, unmeasured anions have come down here. That is how the anion gap will be affected by the decrease in the unmeasured anions or an increase in the unmeasured cations. Metabolic acidosis. It is a systemic acidemia, that is in the blood pH is acidic, with a systemic acidosis also in the system, low arterial pH and low carbon dioxide. pH is equal to low, and then carbon dioxide also same side, it is also low. This is the hallmark of metabolic acidosis. Then there will be a compensation. That compensation reduces the PCO2. The secondary variable also will be lower. In general, expected degree of reduction in the PCO2 is equal to expected PCO2 is 1.5 times the bicarbonate. So if you know the bicarbonate value, just 1.5 times of the bicarbonate plus 8 will be the expected PCO2. Let us say expected bicarbonate is let us say 10 for our convenience, or 20. Let us say 20. 20 into 1.5 is equal to 30. 30 plus minus 8 plus 8 is equal to 38. 38 will be the PCO2 for a bicarbonate of 20. Okay. For a bicarbonate of 30, this becomes 45 here. 45 plus 8, which is 53. Which is again the PCO2 has gone up because we went to the alkali side, more bicarbonate. So this is the calculation that you need to use it. Remember, PCO2 is equal to 1.5 times the bicarbonate plus 8 plus minus 2 is the variability. So metabolic acidosis, two types, anion gap and anion gap metabolic acidosis, and whether the acidosis due to the gap or non-gap, we need to understand. So there is what is called the delta anion gap. We have worked out the observed anion gap. If it is corrected, maybe correction is required, you correct it and subtract 12 from that, that is the delta gap. And delta bicarbonate is equal to, let us say in a given patient, the anion gap is, corrected anion gap is 24, and then his delta gap is equal to 12, and then the bicarbonate, let us say, is 18, and this the 18 is seen because these 12 units are bringing down the bicarbonate. So I need to add that to this. That becomes the actual bicarbonate when it is there. But what you see is 18. So this is 30. What you must normally get is 24. So this 30 is higher than the 24. It is higher. That means there is excess of base. Okay. So what is the delta gap? Delta gap is what? Delta bicarbonate is the calculated bicarbonate minus 24 is called the delta bicarbonate. I will again tell you. So there is a patient whose anion gap is 30, corrected anion gap. This is the AG. And then the delta gap, delta anion gap is equal to 18, 30 minus 18. Now, his bicarbonate is, let us say, is 16, observed bicarbonate in the blood, in the ABG. But that means 18 units of the anions have neutralized the bicarbonate. So I need to add that to that. I get 34. But this 34, is it more than normal or not? Definitely more. How much more? Delta bicarbonate is equal to this 34 minus 24, which should be normal. So there is an excess of base there. Okay, and that excess of base tells, in addition to the anion gap acidosis, there is a metabolic alkalosis. So for mixed disorders, this is useful. Suppose it is less than that, let us say this number is minus 3 or minus 5, then there is an associated non-anion gap metabolic acidosis. So we'll come to that. Okay, so basically the variables are pH and bicarbonate. Both will be lower in case of metabolic acidosis. The secondary variable PCO2 also will be lower. Two types of metabolic acidosis: non-anion gap metabolic acidosis, anion gap metabolic acidosis. If we get non-anion gap metabolic acidosis, we need to do one more calculation, what is called the urine anion gap. Is it positive or negative? Normally it is positive. If it is negative, it tells that there is a gut-related problem is there. For AGMA, we have got mud piles. For NAGMA, we have got harder, which you have seen earlier. So what is urine anion gap? Just like the plasma anion gap, there could be urine anion gap. In the plasma, we have only sodium in the calculation. Here we have got sodium plus potassium. These being relatively constant, they are not used. And here these are also relatively constant, sulfates and phosphate. So we are left with chloride and ammonia here. So what we are requiring to know is sodium plus potassium plus ammonia is equal to chloride plus other anions. Okay, now you bring the chloride this side and take the ammonia that side. Then what will happen? Your sodium plus potassium minus chloride is equal to other anions minus ammonia. other anions minus ammonia. Because when ammonia goes outside, it becomes minus. Okay. The practical point of view is a urine anion gap of sodium plus potassium minus chloride is equal to mostly ammonia, because these are relatively constant. This gives a fair estimation of the ammonia excretion. The normal value of this number is 30 to 35 milliequivalents. It can increase more than milliequivalents, or it can go to the negative side also. Okay. Urine anion gap, potassium, sodium plus potassium minus chloride, normally is either 0 or positive, and it is negative in case of gut-associated disorders, negative, gut negative. Impaired renal tubular excretion, it becomes positive, much more positive than normal, often necessary to, because of the, often may not be necessary because you have already the diarrhea as the cause. So we know the urine anion gap is going to be negative. If it is positive, you consider the different forms of RTA and DKA, toluene poisoning, alcoholic ketoacidosis, etc. Negative, diarrhea, positive, RTA and other acidotic conditions. So you can see a failure of the kidneys to secrete ammonia. So naturally the hydrogen ions are withheld in the body. There is acidosis because of renal tubular dysfunction or increased ammonia excretion in response to acidemia. Both the things can occur. Now, negative causes of negative urine anion gap, GI loss, acid ingestion, dilutional, post-hypocapnia, type 2 RA. As type 1 and type 3, they will have a positive one. What is the mnemonic for anion gap metabolic acidosis? Mud piles. So when we have mud piles, we need to check osmolar gap. That we need to calculate. M, methanol, U, uremia, D, diabetic ketoacidosis or starvation ketosis, P, propylene glycol, I, isoniazid, L, lactic acid, E, ethylene glycol, and salicylate. So when you have acidosis, metabolic acidosis, immediately is it anion gap acidosis, non-anion gap, NAGMA or AGMA. If it is AGMA, the next step is there an osmolar gap? Osmolar gap. OG increased, OG not increased. Whereas here, urine anion gap, UAG increased and UAG decreased or negative. Negative, so not decreased, we say negative. Negative, positive. Okay. So metabolic acidosis, the moment to diagnose metabolic, how do I diagnose? pH is lower, bicarbonate is lower. Then I know I am dealing with metabolic acidosis. Immediately I look at the anion gap, and from the anion gap I do a corrected anion gap. After the corrected anion gap, I look at the delta anion gap. If the delta anion gap is more than 2, then we am allowed plus minus 2, then it is anion gap metabolic acidosis. Suppose the anion gap is falls within the normal range, delta gap is 0, then it is a NAGMA. Then if I know that it is a NAGMA, I have to do the urine anion gap. See whether it is negative or positive. Negative means gut associated, positive means renal tubular acidosis and other acids. Whereas if it is AGMA, that is anion gap metabolic acidosis, these are the conditions, mud piles, and to differentiate them, I require to know the osmolar gap, increased or decreased. What is osmolar gap? We need to see that. This is the non-anion gap metabolic acidosis mnemonic. Used cause, erythrosigmoid, saline administration, endocrinopathies, diarrhea, and carbonic anhydrous inhibitors, hyperalimentation, renal tubular acidosis. This is the non-anion gap acidosis. And this one and diarrhea, to distinguish them, we know the urine anion gap will be very negative, whereas in all other conditions, the urine anion gap will be positive, to differentiate them. Okay, non-anion gap metabolic acidosis, another mnemonic is HARDAP, hyperalimentation, acetozolamide, carbonic anhydrase, RTA, diarrhea, erythrosigmoid diversion, pancreatic fistula. Pancreatic fistula because pancreas secretes alkaline secretions. Bicarbonate will be more. If there is a fistula, the bicarbonate is wasted. Wasting of the bicarbonate is wasting of the alkali, which leads to metabolic acidosis. So this is the non-anion gap metabolic acidosis. In all cases of non-anion gap metabolic acidosis, immediately we require urine anion gap. What is urine anion gap? Urine sodium plus urine potassium minus urine chloride is equal to urine anion gap. Normally it should be a positive number. If it is negative, it suggests diarrhea, gastrointestinal. If it is too much positive, it is probably due to one of the conditions we have thought of that. Okay. What is osmolar gap? Osmolality of a plasma is dependent upon this formula. 2 times the sodium plus glucose divided by 18 and 1 divided by 2.8. Sodium is normal is 140, 2 into 140, 280. Out of 290 milliosmoles, 280 is contributed by the sodium. You can see the osmolarity of plasma. Major contributor is sodium. Okay, if the blood sugar is 90, glucose is 19 divided by 18, that becomes 5. 18 times 5 is into 5 is equal to 90. Likewise, 14 divided by 2.8 is equal to 5. So 280 plus 5 is 290 is the normal plasma osmolality. So in a given patient, you can actually calculate depending on the sodium value, depending on the glucose value, depending on the BUN value. For example, let us say a patient has 135, so we have to multiply it by 2 into 135. Let us say his glucose is 180 divided by 18, this number becomes 10. And let us say this one is 28, 28 dividing 2.8, it is again 10. So 10 plus 10 is equal to 20. 20 plus 270 is equal to 290. That's how you calculate. Okay. In addition, there is a lab will give a measured osmolarity. That is called the MO. The measured osmolarity includes all those osmotic substances which are neither sodium nor glucose nor BUN. Other osmotic substances are included in the measurement by the lab, and that is called the observed osmolarity. Okay, observed, measured minus calculated. Measured is MO, that is in the lab, calculated using this formula. Normally that gap should be 0 or very plus minus 2. But if there is a gap between the measured osmolarity and the calculated osmolarity, there is an osmolarity gap. Okay. Now, metabolic acidosis, the hallmark is pH is 7.3 or less, bicarbonate is also less, PCO2 also less than 40, it is less than 30 here. Is it a NAGMA or is it AGMA? If it is a NAGMA, probably bicarbonate is lost. Two important conditions, diarrhea and renal-tubular acidosis. Urine anion gap you do, this will be negative in this case, whereas it will be positive in this case. Okay, that is the easiest way. Now, increased anion gap, there is an accumulation of some fixed acids in the system. Is it lactic acidosis due to blood lactate because of the hypoperfusion, myocardial infarction, peripheral circulatory failure, whatever is the reason, or it could be ketoacids as in case of starvation, diabetic acidosis, alcoholic ketoacidosis, beta hydroxybutyrate acetoacetic acid, or the ketoacids added, or it could be other organic acids added like amino acid, organic acids like salicylate, or poisoning by methanol, or plasma ammonium is more. What are so many causes which can increase the organic acidemia? Ketoacidosis, lactic acidosis, and organic acidemia. These are the different conditions. How do I differentiate? By looking at the osmolar gap. Osmolar gap is equal to measured osmolarity minus the calculated osmolarity. Calculation I do using sodium into 2 plus glucose divided by 18 plus 1 divided by 2.8. That will be the calculated. Measured is from the lab. Take a difference of that, that becomes the osmolar gap. Here urine anion gap is required. Here osmolar gap is required to differentiate. Okay, this is called the double delta. Anion gap is increased and then the osmotic gap also, both are increased. You consider these are the conditions. That is called the MPEG. Methanol, and then ethylene glycol, propylene glycol, and ethanol. Only anion gap increased, osmotic gap is normal, acetaminophen and salicylates. Analgesics. This is the analgesics, AG alone. If AG is normal and the OG is increased, only one condition of interest, only I is the interest, isopropyl alcohol. Some easier way to decipher those things. Okay, this is the workup for metabolic acidosis in detail. So this will show you metabolic acidosis. Is there a very large acid load in a short time period? That is the first question you ask. If it is yes, some of these conditions have to be considered. If it is no, is there any new plasma anions added? If yes, what is the effective arterial blood volume? If the arterial blood volume is lower, then that means there is dehydration, alcoholic and diabetic ketosis. Effective blood volume is normal. What is the GFR? If the GFR is reduced from the creatinine, you can use the MDR formula and calculate the eGFR. That is renal insufficiency. If GFR is normal, what is the plasma osmolality? If the plasma osmolality is more, these are the conditions. If it is normal, these are the conditions. This is all the AGMA, anion gap metabolic acidosis. Okay, go to the other side. Is ammonia excretion high? No, means it is distal tubular acidosis or proximal tubular acidosis, because ammonia is not properly excreted in those conditions. The ammonia excretion is more. Is it associated with a chloride excretion or is it not associated with chloride? If the chloride and ammonia are together gone, it is diarrhea. If it is not chloride, hypurated ketoacids. These are all the non-anion gap metabolic acidosis. Not. Okay, this is the flow chart for you to differential diagnosis of acidosis. Whenever you get an acidosis patient, you have to work up in this way using the flow chart. Now, metabolic alkalosis, we know there is an increase in the pH, increase in the carbonate, and PCO2 secondary variable also raises how much? 0.1 for every 1 milli equivalent in the bicarbonate. If the bicarbonate shifts from, let us say, 24 to 34, that means 10 units, the PCO2 will go up by 0.1 into 10 is equal to 1. If it goes to 54, it is 2, because it can't shift very much. So that is the thing. So causes are clever PD, contraction, liquorize, endocrine, like Cons and Cushing's and Barrett, vomiting, nasogastric suction, loss of gastric acid, excess alkali, milk alkali syndrome, and then feeding of alkalosis, and then hypercapnia, post-hypercapnia correction, diuretics and chronic diarrhea. Clever PD is the mnemonic for metabolic alkalosis. I'll show you at the end. So approach to acid-base disorder, first look at the pH and bicarbonate, calculate the anion gap, which is nothing but sodium minus bicarbonate minus chloride. If the anion gap is less than 12, it's normal. If it is more than 12, it is elevated. Obtain the delta gap. If necessary, make a correction. If there is an anion gap, delta gap is more, do the bicarbonate correction, then get the bicarbonate delta. And you know whether there is a mixed disorder or not. If anion gap, delta anion gap alone is elevated, is much more than delta bicarb, then you are with agma plus nagma. And if the anion gap is more or less equal to bicarbonate, then you have pure agma. If delta anion gap is less than the delta bicarb, you are with the anion gap metabolic acidosis plus metabolic alkalosis, because bicarbonate delta is more. Here the bicarbonate delta is less, so you have a combination of metabolic acidosis plus anion gap acidosis plus other metabolic acidosis. When you go to the other side, look at the bicarb, normal, that means normal, and the bicarbonate is more, metabolic alkalosis, bicarbonate is less, you are having non-anion gap metabolic acidosis, pure nagma, because bicarbonate less signifies it is acidosis. This is another way of looking at the same picture. Respiratory acidosis, acute and chronic, we already know that. Acute means there is a depression of the respiratory, there is a respiratory depression. So with the result, it could be CNS disorders, or could be pleural disease, effusion, or pleurisy, or lung disorders like COPD, ARDS. Respiratory effort is not good, so much so the carbon dioxide is retained in the body. The retained carbon dioxide elevates the carbon dioxide, and that elevated carbon dioxide is carbonic acid, which reduces the pH. Okay, that is respiratory acidosis means pH is lower, PCO2, the primary variable is higher, respiratory opposite side. What are the 5 main reasons? CNS, pleural disease, chronic lung disease, ARDS, musculoskeletal disorders like, myasthenia or any fracture, rib fracture, and other things, compensatory of the metabolic alcohol. Now we go to the respiratory acidosis. It can be acute or it can be chronic. For acute, every 10 millimeters of mercury increase in carbon dioxide, pH will decrease by 0.08. This is and in the chronic, this relationship is 0.3 because it takes time for the chronic to manifest, and slowly it gets corrected. Whereas respiratory alkalosis initiated by a fall in the carbon dioxide, how? By active process which lowers the bicarbonate. How does the fall occur? By increase in the respiratory response, or by hyperventilation. This hyperventilation can lead to washout of the carbon dioxide, which means there will be less of carbonic acid. And less of carbonic acid means less of bicarbonate in turn, and that is nothing but the respiratory alkalosis. Intracranial hemorrhage, salicylates can produce metabolic acidosis on one side and respiratory alkalosis on the other side because of the hyperventilation. Progesterone ingestion and decreased lung compliance due to anxiety, liver cirrhosis, sepsis. These are some other causes of respiratory alkalosis. Here again it can be acute and chronic. The compensation is same, 0.08, 0.08 for every 10 mm in acute and 0.03 for the chronic, and after 2 weeks it may settle down. These are the things that we have looked at till now, and now is a time that we can